Sales TV. I am the bearded sales guy, and I'm really looking forward to today's session. I'm joined by someone that we crossed paths many years ago, and we've reconnected now that he's in business on his own. And I'd like to, Michael, why don't you say a few words about yourself? Introduce yourself to the audience.
Yeah, I'm glad we reconnected. I think way back in the day, I was always trying to recruit you or hire you or work with you in some capacity, but I don't know, this might be the closest we ever get. Yeah, so quick background on me. So 20 years in sales, it's like carrying a bag, sales leadership. I was first line, second line, third line sales manager. And then in the last 6 years, really did a transformative experience and transitioned into being head of revenue operations at a pretty decent sized company with 100 salespeople, 15 SEs, large CX organization, all that kind of good stuff. And for me, it was a really transformative experience because what it really showed and shared with me was when I was in sales, I really didn't understand what took place on that other side of the fence. And what I mean by that other side of the fence was just all the mechanics that it takes to actually make the business run and be successful. And for me, it was this great moment of exposure to kind of the great calculation, if you will, of what it takes to actually make a business run. Yeah. And I learned a lot from it, and it really opened my eyes, of understanding what it takes to run a business. But more importantly, it helped me really start to understand and respect a lot of leaders that I've come across in my lifetime, where I've looked at them and gone wow, they are great leaders. And the puzzle pieces started to come together where not only are they great sales people and they get along with the sales crowd and know how to rally the team, but they're really good operators. And it really kind of propelled me to understand that entire other aspect of what it takes to run a company.
Yeah. And you've made the leap now. You've gone from corporate to running your own business. It's a relatively new step for you.
Yeah, relatively new step for me. It's an exciting one, and I'm doing what I can to try and hold myself to my own sales, quotas and so forth. But yeah, it's exciting. I mean, I learned a lot in that experience. The sales piece obviously is what it is, but to be candid, I feel like the revenue operations experience that I had over the past 6 years, it allows me to parachute into a lot of different organizations and help them solve challenges that oftentimes are the thorniest issues of the business. They're having trouble hitting goals. They're having a hard time with compensation. They're having a hard time figuring out the right staffing models. They don't know how to set up service levels for their customers. They're having a hard time managing the book of business. There's countless issues that smaller companies that are strapped for resources are challenged by.
Yeah. And no doubt, like many of us new to starting and running our own business, we're wearing many hats, including carrying the bag, as they say in sales. So dusting off those old prospecting techniques and hitting the road. So I think that brings us quite nicely onto the topic today about the role of a modern CRO. And it sounds like this could be quite a complex topic, but if you could simplify it for us, what do you think? What does the role of a modern CRO really mean or consist of for you, Michael?
Yeah. And maybe what I'll do is paint two pictures. I'll paint kind of what I think the modern CRO is or needs to be kind of long-term successful in the role. And then I'll describe maybe the person that we've all worked for or with in the past, where you go, why is this not working out? and so my personal belief is that the modern CRO, they need to be equal parts two things. So 50% sales, which is this kind of intangible thing, right? They've carried a bag, they understand buyer mentality, they understand sales mentality, they understand how reps gain quotas, They understand how reps, use their time, all of those things that go into running a sales org and understanding, how salespeople behave and how sales managers behave. The other 50% that I think a CRO or top sales leader needs to be is that operator. And to be candid, it has not that much to do about the act of selling or giving a pitch or telling a story. It has everything to do with like the mechanics, the metrics, the KPIs of the business, and being an operator and holding people accountable to outcomes and measured outcomes. And I think, for a modern sales leader to be successful, if you are not both of those things, it's going to be really hard to be successful in your job in the long term. And specifically, what you will find is that as companies get bigger and bigger, so 50 million to 75, 75 to 100, 100 to 150, 150 to 2, 2 to 3, all of these different levels and gates of maturity that a company is going to go through. Basically, the problems are going to get harder. The decisions you make are going to get bigger. The impacts that are going to be felt are going to be larger, and it gets really hard. And part of the picture that I want to paint is that like when you get to this level of decision making, like anecdotal evidence it's like it's not a good decision making criteria for important outcomes.
Yeah.
And go ahead.
I was going to say, when you say anecdotal evidence, you're talking about the past experience and how that might apply to the future. That's how I'm interpreting that. Or
yeah, so I would call that as like, some people call it pattern matching, some people call it intuition. On some level, you could also call it bias, right? Hey, I experienced this in the past, therefore this is true, and this is how this is going to turn out, or whatever. I'm a data person, and like maybe what I'll also do is paint a picture of people, and we've all seen this. A sales rep does really good, and they become a top sales rep in the company. Some leadership person goes, man, we need them managing the people because they know what they're doing. So put them in a first line role. Well, what does that person do when they join the first line management? They usually close all the deals for the people they're managing.
Shotgun in them all.
Yep. And they know they shouldn't be doing it, but they do it because it's survive or die.
Yeah.
And then they get promoted again because, man, those results were good. And before you know it, these people eventually might even become heads of sales. But when you really step back and you go like, what is this person? Like, who are they? Well, they were a salesperson not that long ago. And like, maybe nobody along the way actually came in and said like, here's how you actually need to run a business, or here's what you actually need to be mindful of to think about, in terms of like scaling and growing this business. And the anecdote part that I was referring to, or the bias part, would be like, they tend to make decisions based on feelings. And I'm not saying this is like 100% wrong, but they lean into their feelings, and those become decisions that they make in the absence of data, right? Or for example, they have hallway conversations. I talked to John yesterday by the water cooler, and I heard this is happening in the field over and over and over again. Therefore, we're going to put a stop to it. I don't know. That's a pretty small population of data to make a really big sweeping decision that's going to be impacting hundreds of people. Like, could we maybe get some more data behind this decision? I think my belief is that for heads of sales that are not able to make the jump into that other 50% of operator, what eventually happens is they blow up. And you see these people, they take jobs, and they typically last between 12 and 24 months, 18 months. And they might make a career out of that, to be totally candid. But they're never truly like having like a net positive or like game-changing impact on a company. And it's because they never actually like learned a lot of these core mechanics along the way. And it's like, I don't know. I kind of wish, like, rewind 15 years ago, I had somebody sitting on my shoulder telling me what to do, right? Because I mean, like, all this stuff didn't open up to me until I was 20 years deep in sales and sales management. And then I started to realize, like, oh man, there is this whole other equation. And like, I wish I'd known this a long time ago.
Yeah.
We have a question from the audience. Bob Britton asks, how are CROs going to handle the push towards e-commerce? Will it create conflict with CMOs who typically own e-com?
It's a good question. I suppose it depends on, like, okay, there's e-com, but like, what is the supported nature of that commerce experience? And like, I'll paint one extreme. Buyer comes to your website, they self-educate, they self-select, they self-service purchase, they check out, and the instance is, instantiated, they're off and running. Didn't require any sales. Why would you need a sales department? That's just a lot of money being flushed down the drain. I think that vision is really, really hard for what most B2B software companies do, which is they sell complicated solutions. And it's really, really hard to fully e-commerce sell something that is complicated. There's variations of these things. Like, maybe there's initial conquesting, like account, kind of like acquisition that's done with the new business team. But maybe you sell a product or a service that could be e-commerce driven. And I'll give you an example. Google, even where I worked at Demandbase, we had an advertising component. Once you land an account, is it feasible potentially that you could e-commerce experience media being purchased again and again and again because they're essentially reloading their inventory? Sure. Is that going to cause friction, with CRO, CMO? Possibly. But I would still say that's like a hybrid. It's going to be sales supported. So I don't know. I'm not sure if that's a clean answer for you, but I think it's uncharted territory, and it's something that's going to emerge over the next 10 years for sure.
Yeah, but you built a nice framework around it. Basically, you said if there's sales involved in the process, well, then it would be sales, and if it's non-sales involvement, no sales involvement, then why would you compensate sales?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, just in general, I hate to say it, but if e-com is actually servicing sales for your company, you don't need expensive salespeople.
Right.
Like, it's that easy to purchase. Like, why are we paying really expensive? Like, salespeople make an enormous amount of money. That's one of the biggest cost centers for a business. And if your stuff is that easy to sell, well, you probably need pretty junior people to be supporting, that sales flow.
So I want to take a couple of steps back to something you were saying earlier, Michael, around that step up, and paraphrasing, so forgive me, but you kind of move from head of sales where 90% of your decisions are based on emotion. And as you were saying that, I was thinking, well, aren't most decisions based on emotion, and then we just we rationalize it with data? And I've heard Rob say that before, I'm sure, more than one occasion. But it feels like what you're actually saying is, well, we need to get to a point, sales leaders, chief revenue officers need to get to a point where they have created an environment where they can trust the data. I mean, I've been in organizations, and pretty big organizations, where the results are gained all of the time just to get budget to do more stuff.
Yeah.
So how do you prevent that from happening?
Yeah, these are good questions. I mean, I think if you're a CRO or head of sales, you fundamentally have to have a really good, whatever label you want to slap on it, rev ops, sales ops, field ops, you've got to have a partner in crime that is going to cut through the BS and actually provide you a sane look in the mirror.
Mm.
And I've seen and I'll just give a classic example, marketing with like attribution. Oh yeah, like, it's always going to be a contested data set. Oh, last touch, first touch, hybrid touch, every channel is the best, this channel or my program is the best. Right. So these things are always going to be contested or whatever. But like,
or that event worked. Hey, can we just attach Bob to that?
Channel, partner, right? Attribution, these things can always get fuzzy. But like, I don't know, as head of sales, the number sits with you and nothing else matters. And like, you have to have a partner in crime that will scrape it all down to the metal and get you true answers. And if you don't have true answers, you're not making the right decisions. And so like, there has to be a little bit of like eye connection between the head of sales and the person who's like creating the data for them. And like, I don't care if it looks good, bad, or ugly, it's the truth.
Yeah.
And if you're not focused on solving those problem areas, you're going to be in trouble.
Yeah. I think this is where, for me, the role of the CRO is one where, marketing, sales ops or rev ops, whatever you want to call it, it's all rolling up to them.
Yep.
If you've got these separated business units, then not rolling into the CRO, then that's where problems arise, because you're always trying to justify yourself.
Yeah, for sure. And even the role of RevOps, earlier stage companies, I think it's pretty common that it sits under the CRO. Mm-hmm. And so there's kind of a direct access and so forth. There is a place too where maybe a company gets so big and the reporting takes on such an importance and governance takes on such an importance, because maybe you're thinking about IPO, or maybe you have IPO'd, and things like investor reporting become so critical to the company that RevOps, I mean, there's a bit of a tug of war between RevOps sitting, with the CFO or sitting with, CRO. I could see it being both. But I will tell you, if it sits with the CFO, you're not going to get fake answers. You're going to get real answers. So there's arguments to be had for why it would sit there, right? And getting to your point of like, we don't want cooked data that's just telling the story that we want people to hear. It's actually telling the truth.
Yeah.
Michael, let's take action. What are some of the more common problems that you hear? And more importantly, what are some of the steps the audience can take to solve?
Yeah. So like, I guess if I was, like a rep that maybe was aspiring to, become a manager, or if I was even a manager at any level of the chain today, and I looked in the mirror and I said, geez, like I know I'm still basically a salesperson. I'm a storyteller, I'm a pitcher, I'm a presenter, I can manage salespeople, but I don't understand the mechanics of the business and how it works. A few tips that I would just give. So first would be a focus on pipeline. Mm-hmm. As you guys well know, like pipeline it's everything. And in particular, pipe gen, right? So like as a sales leader, you could be doing a million things, right?
Yeah.
If you as an organization are not hitting your pipe gen goals, you're going to miss. I'm just telling you, you're going to miss. You're going to miss your bookings targets. Nothing else matters. And so like pipe gen becomes like this like really important moment for a sales leader to show their leadership. And what I want to say too is that a bad leader just like points at everyone and goes, hey man, like you guys suck, and like SDRs, you suck, you're not hitting your goals. Marketing, you're not hitting your goals. No, everyone's got an equal hand in this thing. And it's like, this is an opportunity for a sales leader to be a force multiplier in like the cadenced marketing and sales. Like if you guys have weekly meetings or bi-weeklies or monthlies, whatever it is, where you get together and look at goals versus actuals, right? Be a positive force multiplier. And part one is make sure your own house is clean. Mm-hmm. So like there is no good high functioning sales organization where even the most expensive outside sales reps don't have quota for pipeline gen. So like before you start pointing fingers, how much activity has your team done? And does your team actually have pipeline quotas, and where do they sit on pipeline generation? Because like I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of senior sellers out there where they think they've arrived at some fantasy land where it's like, oh no, because I'm so senior, because I've been doing this for so long, I don't have to generate a pipeline. I work with my SDR really tightly, and I work with marketing really tightly, and everything works out.
Yeah.
It's not going to work out. It doesn't work out. You have to be responsible. Age in experience makes no difference. And so that's like, really important. And then the other piece is, don't point fingers. Come to the meeting with ideas. If you're short on pipeline, hey man, how do I partner with you marketing to come up with field marketing events? Maybe we start doing campaigns with mailers. Hey SDR, like what are your sequencing messages look like? Or what are the accounts you're working on? Is there anyone that I know in my network I can help you break through to? It's a team sport, man. And like you have to be coming to these things, like willing to play ball with everyone and get creative and be successful.
Yeah, 100%. I'm totally with you. Sorry, go on. Were you?
Yeah, no, it's critical. I mean, like if you miss those quarterly goals, it's not only going to screw your current quarter, but it's going to have impacts in your future quarters too. Most deal cycles are greater than 90 days. And so, yes, we're freaking out about the current quarter, but guess what, man? If you blow this quarter, you're going to probably miss next quarter too. And it may, it may even impact +2 quarters too.
Yeah, it didn't. I'm totally with you. For me, around 2005, 2006, I realized the importance of having that, what I used to call, and still do actually, the opportunity forecast. So it's not the revenue forecast. It's when is this conversation likely to become a qualified opportunity, and have that 12-month view into the future. And I still use that today. Even when I was head of sales within Oracle, that's what I used with my teams. If we don't know that, we have no control over whether or not we're influencing or likely to achieve the number that we've got. And it baffles me that sales leaders don't do that.
That's right.
Or they do exactly what you just said. They point the finger. Oh, our SDR team's crap. Lead gen in this company's rubbish.
Along those lines, we have a comment from Bob Britton saying the outsourcing of the SDR BDR process has caused sellers' prospecting skills to atrophy. Michael, I'd be interested to hear your reaction to that.
I guess, so I'm just going to take that to mean outsourcing of SDR, BDR, meaning we've outsourced the entire function maybe to a third party.
Right, as opposed to having somebody grow up through the ranks of the SDR, BDR into the salesperson.
And I've learned a new word, by the way. Thank you, Bob Britton.
Outsourcing?
Atrophy, sorry, refers to a decrease in size or wasting away of a body part or tissue.
Yeah, it's like my muscles.
That's right. Hopefully not our brains.
No.
Yeah, I don't. It's a bit of a controversial topic, to be candid, and like I'm just going to state that I have a strong belief that in-house SDR BDR function is the way to go. And if you have a really good SDR BDR management team, like I just don't know how you build a scaling company without having that in-house, to be totally candid, because there is a direct connection between hiring typically young, inexperienced people that come in and do this role for a period of typically 18 to 24 months and then graduate up through. And these people are hungry. They've learned the pitch. They've learned, the company. They know who's who in the zoo within the company. They know how to get stuff done, and they can be put in a place to be successful as a rep. And my experience too has been like the people who have graduated up through the SDR program into being the reps oftentimes become the most successful reps. And like, I will tell you more often than not too, hiring from the outside, I've seen more people come in with like under the banner of this person's a rock star, you pay a ton for them, and then they don't succeed, and it's like, are they a mediocre rep amongst the pool or whatever? So like, I don't know, that's a bit of my own point of view on that. But like in terms of the atrophy part, I'm just going to call BS on it. And it's basically like the only reason it atrophies is because it's allowed to atrophy. And like, basically, like I believe that as a sales org, you're issued your dollar quotas, and your dollar quota might be like, I have to sell this much recurring or this much services or this much XYZ, and that's your quota. But the same way you issue that dollar quota, you also issue a quota of pipe generated per quarter. And for like a rep, it might actually be whatever, 3, 4, 5, whatever that number is. It's not going to be a huge number on a quarterly basis. But you're only allowed to atrophy if that's not part of your quota, because then it's just like this land of the abyss. And like, hey, I did as good as I could. I got 1, or whatever. And it's basically unmanaged. And, part of the interviewing cycle and part of like the hiring process should be, this is what we do, and this is what's expected of people who work here. And if you run a ship like that, like you are running a top flight sales organization.
Yeah. Brilliant. Well,
Michael,
Rob,
this has been great. Yeah. How can people get in touch with you?
Yeah, so LinkedIn. I'm sure you can find me. So just, I think it's under my name, Michael Heilmann. Yeah, that's my name, Michael Heilmann. I also have company website, ScaledRev.com. That just talks a bit about me and some of the stuff that I do from a consulting, basis point of view. But yeah, happy to chat with people, kind of direct message, further on this topic. But I have a lot of thoughts to share with folks on things that you can do to, kind of convert towards that operator, place.
Nice.
Fantastic. We now have a newsletter. Get show highlights, beyond the show insights, and upcoming show notes. Visit us at SalesTV.live/newsletter or scan the QR code on screen here. On behalf of myself and Alex and the team here at Sales TV, Michael, thank you so much for joining us. To our audience, also, thank you for being a part of today's show. And we'll see you next time on Sales